Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So in addition to wedding planning, I'm also the owner of Velvet Bride, which is a bridal boutique here in Missoula, Montana. And today's video, we're talking about wedding dress shopping, and specifically terminology and words that are good to know prior to going into your wedding dress shopping experience. Wedding dress shopping can be a little bit overwhelming when it's your first time. There are so many options out there. The shopping experience is a little bit more emotionally heightened than most other shopping experiences you have probably had up to this point. It's kind of a whole new world for a lot of brides as far as the terminology used, and having a little bit more knowledge going in might make you feel a little less overwhelmed and kind of understand what your stylists are referring to and talking to about when going through your bridal appointment. So today we're going to break down the most common terms that you might hear when you are both researching for your bridal appointment as well as during your wedding dress shopping experience and appointment as a whole. Number one is silhouette. So the silhouette of a dress refers to kind of the cut and the shape of the dress. So this is something that you will likely see prior to wedding dress shopping if you are looking at inspiration and gowns before your actual appointment, as well as during the appointment itself. So the silhouette refers to the shape of the dress. Two most common terms you will hear is like a fitted or flowy gown. So when it comes to the shape of a dress, the fitted category typically encompasses a fit and flare style, a trumpet, and a mermaid. So these are all gowns that are going to be more fitted to your body and be more curve hugging, so that you are seeing more of your body shape, and it's going to be a more tightly fitted dress. On the opposite side is the flowy gowns, and this is going to be your A-lines and your ball gowns, which an A-line is something that is fitted to typically the natural waistline and then kind of flows out, so making somewhat of an A shape. And then obviously ball gown, which is essentially the same thing, just on a larger level. I do go into a lot more detail about wedding dress silhouettes as a whole. I have a whole video specifically on that if you want to check that out and learn a little bit more about wedding dress silhouettes specifically. But these are the most common terms that you will hear and what to expect if a stylist asks you if you want a fitted or flowy gown. Number two is train. A train is what extends in the back of a dress, and most wedding dresses will have some type of a train. They vary in length, and most of them will have some sort of a train. This is something that can be altered if you don't want a super long train, or sometimes wedding dresses that you are trying on can be ordered in with a longer train if you do want a longer train. So when you see photos of a wedding dress and there's a lot of extra fabric laid out behind the bride, typically in a circular shape, that is what's referred to as the train. Number three is a bustle, which is what you do with the train when you are going to be dancing at your wedding and want to not have a very long piece of fabric hanging off the back of your dress. So the bustle essentially makes it all one length all the way around to make it just a floor length gown. Typically, how a bustle is installed is a seamstress will sew in usually clear buttons and threads that will be looped together in a sequence depending on the shape and the style and the length of your gown. This will vary depending on gown, but it's installed into the dress so that you can pick it up and be able to have different layers of the fabric picked up to create just a floor length gown all the way around, so that you don't have a super long train that you're dragging around behind you and trying to dance with for the rest of the night. Number four is bodice. So the bodice is basically the top part of a dress, typically from the waist up, is referred to as the bodice of the dress. So if you hear something like a beaded bodice, that means the top portion of the dress is going to be beaded. A lot of times you'll hear like a structured bodice or boning in the bodice. Again, bodice just refers to essentially from like the collarbone to the waistline is the bodice of a dress. Number five is applique, and for this one it might be better for me to show you an example. So let me grab a dress that has floral applique on it. So applique refers to typically a type of lace that is on a dress that isn't the actual fabric itself. So it's placed over the top of a dress. So this has floral appliques on top of the crepe fabric here. You can see it on the waistline and also on the sides, and then it's also in the actual skirt of the dress as well. So this, hopefully you can see that. The lace that's placed over the top of already existing fabric is called an applique. Number 6 is boning, which again, easiest to see an example of it. Boning is referred to structure that's put into typically the bodice of a dress that is going to provide structure so that it is fitted around the rib cage, and it's going to keep the fabric kind of taut to the body and provide more structure and support in there. So on this particular dress, you can see it on the inside here. So these lines throughout the bodice are what's called boning. So they're thick, almost like wire pieces, so that it doesn't bend or flop over, and provides the structure in the front. You'll come across gowns that have boning that you can see, where it's kind of visible, like this one. I don't know how well you can tell in the video. In person, it's kind of sheer right here, so you can see the boning a little bit, but a lot of times there's boning in the dress that is underneath that you can't even see. Speaking of, typically when the boning is visible, this is what is called like a corset style bodice. So something like this, where you can see those lines right through, giving kind of the illusion of a corset. Number 8 is embroidery. This is something that you will likely see on some dresses. There are several different types of laces. Applique, which we already talked about, and then embroidered lace is another one. And with embroidery, it's more fine thread pieces, where the applique is typically a thicker like patch that is put onto the fabric. And embroidery is more fine lines that are stitched in to create a floral design or some kind of design pattern. So you can see on here that they are just small lines that are sewn on and embroidered onto the dress. Number 9 is tulle, which, while I still have this dress, this material over the top, very common in a lot of A-line and even ball gown style dresses, is to have some type of tulle. So that's what this kind of almost netting looks like, this material right here in between the embroidery. That is referred to as tulle. Again, very common fabric when looking at flowier gowns and ball gowns. Number 10 is illusion lace. This is something that you will probably hear a lot as well, and that refers to when there is kind of a sheer patch on a dress, but there's lace over the top. So it almost looks like the lace is just sitting on the skin. So something like this, when you have it's sheer on that side panel right there, but then you have lace over the top, that is when it is referred to as illusion lace or lace illusion. Number 11 is ruching, and that is referred to when there is gathering on the dress that is gathered and kind of folds like this. So this right here is referred to as ruching. There's also ruching down here on the skirt part as well. Not only does it add a little bit of texture and just kind of interest into the dress, but it also helps to hide any sort of insecurity someone might have. Works really well on satin gowns, as satin can be a very unforgiving fabric. So it's nice when there's a little bit of ruching, and it helps feel a little bit more comfortable on the body. Number 12 is a drop waist. So like we referred to the A-lines having fitted to about the natural waistline, a drop waist then is a dress that is typically fitted to a little bit lower than the natural waistline, so just above the hip. A drop waist is most common on an A-line, so rather than being fitted and coming off at the natural waist, it's fitted and kind of flows out from a point just below the natural waistline. That is referred to as a drop waist. Number 13 is lead time or production time. So this refers to the time before the dress is actually shipped. So how long does it take for the dress to be made? How far in advance you need to order the dress from your wedding date? Typically for a lot of stores, in my store here, it's 4 to 6 months, kind of depending on the designer. 6 months is fairly standard and what to expect in a lot of places. However, there are some stores that are upwards of 12 months, maybe even longer. So make sure you're doing a little bit of research depending on where you plan to shop, and make sure that your lead time or your production times are going to work with your overall timing and when your wedding date is, in reference to when you are planning to shop for your wedding dress. Next is alterations. This is what happens once you already order your dress and it comes in. The alterations are typically done on essentially every single dress. Pretty much any bride needs some sort of alterations to get the perfect fit for their wedding dress. It is very uncommon for a dress to come in and just have a perfect fit all the way around and not need any type of alterations. So alterations is what is done once the dress comes in to kind of take in maybe a strap, take in a little bit in the bust, take in the waist, whatever needs to be done to alter the dress to your perfect fit. Next is a trunk show and sample sale. So Both of these terms you might see or hear prior to your wedding dress appointment, or maybe your bridal boutique that you are attending is having a trunk show or a sample sale when you are visiting. So a trunk show is something that a store will have a collection of gowns that aren't typically in the store, usually for a weekend or a week or two. So a short period of time where you can shop gowns that aren't normally there. It can be designers that they carry and just styles that aren't normally in the store, or sometimes it's a designer that isn't even normally in the store, so an exclusive opportunity to try on gowns that aren't normally there. Sample sale then is when the store is selling their kind of floor models as a way to think of samples for a discounted price. So usually this happens when they are getting new gowns in and need to kind of move out older gowns, or maybe a designer is discontinuing some gowns, they can no longer be ordered in brand new. A sample sale is when the store is sampling or selling their actual samples, so the dresses that brides have been trying on in the store. Those ones are being sold as is off the rack out of the store. Those are the most common terms you will likely hear prior to and during your wedding dress shopping appointment. Hopefully having this knowledge will make things a little bit less overwhelming for you, and you can go into your appointment blissfully excited and able to find your dream wedding dress. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.